The angry one here this morning, but said, looking at the C Spire text line, it's as far as what do you call Joe Biden's political or pathological mindset? He has to be able to relate to everybody out there.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it earlier. There's got to be some condition that is known in the books of psychiatry and psychologists out there exactly why he lies, but has to relate to people. I mean, the latest was he grew up in a Greek family or something, and you called him Bipanopoulos. And I thought, this guy never ever stopped. So it just goes on and on. And Brian and Laurel says the name you are looking for is lying politician. So I don't disagree with that one. Biden's disorder 601 said it's called self-centered stupidity. And Boomerang said menopausal. One more, 601, called it FOBS, full of BS. I won't quote the whole thing.
Yeah.
And one more said pathological liar. But there's a lot of people out there who understand that this guy just ain't right, and he's leading the country. So,
yeah,
how are you doing, sir?
Good. It's been a good last few weeks, and
yes.
we're in the final stretch before we get to final exams, and we're done for this semester.
When are you guys out?
Graduation, I believe, is May 4th. If that's a Friday.
God, Jesus, it's crazy.
I know.
That one went by fast.
Tell me about it. You know what I do is I keep a countdown on Facebook for every week, and we're down to this past week. It was, I think, 13 weeks down and 4 to go. But one of those weeks is final exams, and another week is graduation week. So it's actually about 2.5 weeks.
Now they graduate. How many would graduate this year out of your class?
I would say probably for me about 7 to 10 out of a class of about 42. I have 42 majors right now, and I'll lose about 7 to 10 of those.
In political science?
Yeah. The university itself is at about 4,500, maybe 46.
Huh? How many of those are Mississippians and not out of state?
That's a great question. I would say probably about 80% of them are Mississippians. We do get some out-of-staters, but the SPEED scholarship, which waives tuition for in-state students, has really done a lot to bring up the number of students from Mississippi that are going to school right now.
Let me. I was going to do this cut at 8:30, but executive decision here. I want to play this Whoopi Goldberg because she was making a defense for life itself, and my thought is this one, and follow me on this one,
okay?
Because the preborn don't have anybody to fight for them in the judicial system. They're not even recognized as human beings, even though everybody knows they are. Has the same connotations to me as saying that an African American back in the slavery days was not a real person or 1/3 of a person or whatever it's this, and nobody wants to make that comparison. But if they were in a courtroom and they had some representation, and I thought their side was listening to this, and it meant life or death for them, how would they take this Whoopi Goldberg summation here? But here's what she said.
No one is obligated to have an abortion. But if you find yourself in a position where you have to, I want to make sure that if you decide this is what you need to do, I'm going to get behind you because I don't know your life. And if you say this is what you need, that's what I'm going to do. 50 weeks, 75,000 weeks, whatever, how many weeks, it's nobody.
Oh, did you hear that? 50 weeks, 75,000 weeks, it really doesn't matter.
50 weeks, 75,000 weeks, whatever, how many weeks, it's nobody's business.
Wow.
It's you, your doctor, and God. That's who you have to be conversational to. And it's not mentioned in the Big Ten, I'm just going to say.
No.
In the Big Ten, it is not mentioned.
The commandments?
Yeah. You know, because I figured God was pretty clear. Don't mess with somebody's wife, because you're going to be mad if they're messing with yours. Just, you know, common sense stuff.
Say, thou shalt not kill.
They believe that. Yes, well, here's the thing. I think thou shalt not kill cannot be used as the block, because we allow wars all the time.
Yes, we do.
The Crusades
We allow the death
were about all these things.
We allow guns.
Yes. So there is some conversation to be had here. So you can either thou shalt not kill for everybody.
Yes.
And everything.
And everything. Or we have to talk about all the things that you and I need to do.
You see, as a student of body language, I was sitting here and I would have won the bet, because I thought when she hit that, the good professor is going to have some facial changes there, and you and you did. It's remarkable that she would say that. Here's what she basically is doing. She's saying that, forget about Moses. Let me interpret the entire Ten Commandments and everything else. So your thoughts on that?
I think it's generally understood. When it says "thou shalt not kill," it means thou shalt not kill in terms of murder. Obviously the Bible is full of episodes of people defending themselves, and I don't think that going to war, if it's in a just cause, is a violation of that commandment. Matter of fact, to the opposite, Christ said, "No greater love that one has than to lay down his life for a brother."
That's it.
And so these people are completely without nuance. I can't think of anybody who, when they're pregnant, says, "Oh, feel that protoplasm, in my stomach." They say, "Oh, I just felt the baby kick." It's a life, and that was the one life that she did not bring into the equation, the life that is growing inside. If you want to make an argument that the abortion should be allowed up to a certain point, which I'm Catholic, so I do not buy into that, but if you want to say, that it maybe up to 6 weeks, maybe even 10 weeks, that's one thing. But to say up, she effectively said, Paul, that to the moment of birth, you should be able to have an abortion. I think all of us know of people that have had kids that were born somewhere between 7 and 9 months, and the baby was completely viable outside of the mother's body. It just strikes me that you're getting into a place where you are playing God if you have an abortion, especially past a certain point.
You think that she would allow, if you came in and you said, "Look, I'm Professor Glenn Antizzo, I'd love to sit here and watch this film with me and show it to your audience on what an abortion does and how the effect is on a living, innocent baby inside the womb." Would you watch it? And she would absolutely, vehemently chastise the hell out of you and say, absolutely not. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. Hey, look.
Why wouldn't you watch it?
When you go in for a procedure as simple as a colonoscopy, they want you to watch a video so you can make informed consent when you go in. For something like you said, that is as big as an abortion, I would think that you would also want to have informed consent. A lot of people are doing it and don't know fully what it is.
Well, that's why when the movement was that let us make it mandatory as possible just to hear the heartbeat, because we got to believe that a mother hears the heartbeat, and if she hears that, then maybe she'll change her mind, and just the efforts to try to save some lives. But this thing about the Ten Commandments and killing, you were absolutely right, and that could be taken out of context. I'll never forget when it dawned on me early on in life how the mafia could actually kill people and still go to church. And be so close to the priest and everything else. They viewed this. I think their out was just exactly that. This is war, and we're allowed to do this in war. And they customized their brain and their thinking to avoid anything that conflicted with that, much like Whoopi Goldberg does as far as is it a human or a fetus. And if you don't recognize it, then you're still in the clear. It's, Paul Harvey used to call it selective indignation, and I think that's what it is. We'll turn our attention to I didn't mean to go into this.
No, that's all right.
But it's very, very interesting. Turn our attention to overseas and the laws going on with Glenn Antizzo, who's professor of political science, Mississippi College. Coming up next, Joey Deason fills us in on the status of a massive projects plural that is. Executive Director, Madison County Economic Development Authority at 8:05. House and Senate back at work. Oxford Way Joe Austin Band and Pour Me One More Paul. There you go. Speaking of which, did you know that you can skip the store, get water and more, like at the business, Glenn, or at the school, or at home? You're always out of water, always out of something to drink. You got to go to the store to refill this before you need groceries, and it's a hassle. We've got a way to solve that hassle, and it's delivered right to your door by a company called Excel, Exell. Local water company. Excel delivers more than water. They've got Gatorade, Celsius, Bubbler directly to you. And if you're a business, you can get a variety of delicious, flavorful coffees and teas. All you got to do is sign up for a 6-month bottled water contract for your home or office today, and you get your first 5-gallon bottle absolutely FW or FRWE. Visit today. It's visit watertomydoor.com. Use the code DRINKITIN at checkout to get that great deal, and it's as simple as it is. All right, here's the thing that seems to be forming over the last several days. In some of the weekend disputes, there were some holidays or calls for action by the Palestinian people. But what frightens most of us when we watch this, Professor, is the amount of people gathered together in some of these major city streets. Where did these people come from? And I think these are legal residents for the most part. So the question is got to be for most of us, if we've let 9 million people in and maybe more, it's going to exacerbate this. And if we give them driver's license and we let them vote, they'll probably be running for the city council. And what is America going to look like in some of these major cities in 10 years?
Yeah, no, a lot of folks, who are protesting out there are either people that are, new arrivals, I think, in some cases. I don't have the numbers, but just sort of based on the little bit I know, I think a lot of them also, however, are young people who are, domestic Americans, basically have always lived here, parents always lived here, who are young, they are idealistic, they get their news more from, not Yik Yak, I
was going to say Al Jazeera.
No, well, no. What's the app that everybody listens to the videos?
TikTok.
TikTok. Thank you. I think they're getting their news from these sources rather than from straight up news sources. And let's face it, the Palestinian side in this conflict in the Middle East are masters of manipulating public opinion. You forget if you read what's going on, you would forget that Israel was initially attacked on October 7th.
That has been left out, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, and all it is now is about Palestinians being killed, and that is tragic. Don't get me wrong. However, people need to remember that the reason that these people are being killed is that Hamas initiated the attack, and then Hamas hides behind the skirts of women and hides behind children, and basically uses them as human shields. They won't come out and fight Israel in a direct way, and they are basically leveraging the situation in Rafah in order to preserve themselves.
Isn't it a lot like cancer? I mean, you can't leave a little cancer there. You have to go and make sure it's absolutely clear.
Yeah.
If not, it's going to get you one way or the other. And I think that's basically what they're saying. There was a story this morning about the ground game. The last push in some of those areas. I'm not sure if that's in that tunnel area or where, but there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen there with Israel going and finishing it up.
Yeah, no, it's Israel is, as you point out, I think is going to need to to finish off Hamas. They need to do it, however, in a way that does not maybe necessarily trigger a larger war. You've got Hezbollah in Lebanon that's been trying to pin down some of the Israeli forces, keep them up north to keep them away from Gaza. And, obviously the Iranians are moving their chess pieces. They've got Hezbollah in Lebanon. They got the Houthis in Yemen. They've got their various militias in Syria and in Iraq. And I think what they're looking to do is take some of the heat off of Gaza. But Gaza, Hamas needs to be destroyed. I hope Israel can find a way to get the evacuees who were moved to Rafah out. Typically, they give about 72 to 96 hours. Get out, because anybody that's left behind, we will consider, hostiles, just like we did in Iraq.
I'm thinking, though, can we make it till November? If he doesn't win, then we've really got a problem. Can we make it to November without going to war again with Iran?
Us, I think we can. I think we will probably avoid it. But Israel, there was a story I was reading just as while I was waiting to come on here in the studio, and it was saying that if there is a massive Iranian-directed attack against Israel, that Israel is drawing up plans to attack Iranian nuclear facilities, and that could trigger, obviously something huge. But at the same time, Paul, if they wait around for Iran, I'm not saying Israel should attack Iran, but I am saying that the longer that Iran is allowed to have these facilities intact, the greater the chance they're going to have nuclear weapons sooner rather than later. And they've made their intentions clear that Israel will be the first place they use them.
If there was a suitcase bomb right now to be used in New York City, do you not think that they would use it? I want you to listen to this. This is just a little bit. And if I had relatives in that area, it'd scare the hell out of me. Here's just one of the protesters up there.
Why are our protests, why are they so anti-America? Gaza has shown the entire world why these protests are so anti-America. Because it's the United States government that provides the funds for all of the atrocities that we just heard about. And this is why Imam Khomeini, who declared the International Day of Quds, this is why he would say to pour all of your chants and all of your shouts upon the head of America. Malcolm X said, we live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth. It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth.
Wow. So... Not only are we teaching kids, I don't care if you're Irish or Hungarian or Italian American, not only are we teaching our kids to hate America, but we're importing that hate from overseas. Yeah, that doesn't bode well.
I don't understand the logic. Maybe somebody could explain it to me. I don't understand the logic of wanting to immigrate to the United States if you hate this place so much. And you bring up a point earlier, and there may be something to it, that you've got people who maybe do want to come here in order to try to terraform the U.S. into their image. Look, make no mistake about it. Most people who come here love this place. I know my family immigrated here in 1911 because they saw the promise of America and they wanted to take advantage of it. And I think most do. But I think we need to do a better job of screening those who come with malign intent as opposed to those who want to be here, because they want to be part of America.
Well, and if you just follow the rules and regulations that are set forth, we've got a great plan that's worked.
Right. Now, look, this guy does have a constitutional right to spout anything that he wants to spout. But at the same time, he's got to remember, I don't know whether this guy was a citizen or not. I read about this, and I was not clear whether this guy was a legal resident of the United States, a citizen of the United States, just somebody visiting the United States. But this guy, if he is not, you got to remember, if you are visiting in this country, if you are you're on a student visa, for example, you really need to show a little respect and be, remember that you're a guest in somebody else's house. Yeah. And, you're free to say that, but, I would reconsider the wisdom of doing so.
Well, the other thing, too, and it's hard for us, we kind of forget this and cast it off, but we have to put this in this equation. there are people out there who are supporting, egging on, funding this narrative, from supplying you with the hotel rooms, the buses to get there, a stipend to eat, the placards you need, the chants, everything else. And whether it's the George Soroses or other people who have something to gain, this thing doesn't happen organically in most cases.
There are also some madrasas in this country that are absolutely teaching anti-Semitic hatred.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Final segment's coming up. Final segment here, your thoughts on where we're going here. Just real quick, we didn't catch up with the Ukrainian situation, and one of the stories out there was that we are slow on some of our arms shipments and ammo, and the Russians have regained some lands or ground. What do you think is the latest in that ongoing war?
I'll be the first to admit I've not been following that as close as I've been following things recently in Gaza. But, again, this is one of those wars that you could have had a more favorable outcome if the United States did not force Ukraine to play by the American playbook. The American playbook, since the end of World War II, seems to always be to play for a negotiated tie. We just give them enough weapons, but then place when I say just enough to hold their own, not enough to go on any tremendously effective offensive. And we force them to play by certain rules. You can't use the weapons in this way. You can't use them against these targets. And so, and then we're surprised when there is a stalemate on the battlefield. And you're right. I mean, because of the diminished supply of the weapons, and part of that is, Congress held things up. But, you're placing the Ukrainians in a position where, they are losing the leverage that they had earlier in the conflict in the battlefield. And they are losing, more importantly, I think, for the long term, a lot of lives. They cannot as readily replace soldiers as the Russians can.
And the Russians also were trying to replace some soldiers with, I think, getting younger and younger in that battle is some of the stories out there. Oh. But one of the other things too, Professor, is this: that historically before this and before the war, and during certainly the first Trump campaign, we knew how corrupt this country was. I mean, there were a lot of people on both sides who said it's got to be the most corrupt country in the world. Yeah. And it's almost like we're talking about, all right, we maybe before November we got to get them into the European Union. Right. It's almost like asking the Rotary Club to merge with MS-13. I mean, who wants to do that? Do we want to go to war if they are a member of it? If Russia continues to attack and they are in there, then I guess we have to go to war with Russia.
Yeah, well, I mean, just getting back to what you were saying about the corruption, obviously that is why they've been blocked from the EU, and it's why a lot of people are having second thoughts about, possibly allowing them into NATO. And one of the pledges that they made when we started helping them out was that they were going to clean up the government, but then you find out, as we discussed in an earlier, time I was on, that we've been sending them money, and the money was supposed to go to the Lviv arsenal in order to purchase, 100,000 shells, and the money was paid to the arsenal, and people in the defense ministry and people working at the arsenal pocketed tens of millions of dollars to enrich themselves, at the cost of their, lives in their own country. To be honest with you, I think it's creating possibly a backlash within Ukraine of people asking, do I want to fight? Do I want to give up my kids, or do I want to give up my own life to fight for a government I don't believe in, because this is the way they are? I mean, in a sense, I know that I'm drawing a very loose analogy, so before anybody starts bombarding you with text messages, it's just sort of like South Vietnam in the sense that, you have to be able to engender a degree of support. And the government in Ukraine had a lot of goodwill from its people and from the international community. But the more that we get stories like the one that happened at the Lviv arsenal, the more people, both in Ukraine and outside, that want to be benefactors are questioning the wisdom of doing so, and I understand that.
Well, also the area that they were trying to take back over had a lot of people who were sympathetic to Russia.
Right, ethnic Russians.
Ancestry and everything else. Right. But the other part, and I think what you're seeing is this also, that if tomorrow we find out that Russia's putting on a final drive here and it's collapsing as far as the Ukrainian, with an increase in number of deaths of soldiers, we're going to find out some of the biggest people at the top level, including the president, are going to flee to some country. And when they flee, they're going to be fleeing with an ungodly amount of money. Is what a lot of people think.
If the money isn't there already, I wouldn't put it past some people having secret Swiss bank accounts.
We hear these stories of ships being bought and unbelievable vacations, et cetera, by some of the people at the top level. So we don't know what to believe.
Yeah, no, it's a shame because I do support the right of these folks to fight. Maybe the deal they should have taken was the one that some people were putting on the table of giving up the little bit of territory to get the rest in NATO. But
if Biden says they need to belong in NATO, absolutely they do not need to be belonging. They need to be in NATO, of course.